What if everything you thought you knew about history was a lie? Jessica never expected to die that day, but when she did, what she saw on the other side changed everything. She met Jesus, and what he revealed about black people, their history, and their divine purpose will shock you. This isn't just another near-death experience story. This is a message, one that was hidden for centuries, one that powerful forces have tried to erase. But now, the truth is coming to light. And once you hear it, you'll never see the world the same way again. Jesus showed Jessica a vision of ancient wisdom, of stolen knowledge, of a battle that has been raging for centuries. He told her that black people were chosen for something greater, but that there was an enemy working in the shadows to keep them from realizing their true power. And now, time is running out. Could this be the awakening that the world has been waiting for, or will the deception continue? Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to hear might just change your life. And before we dive in, make sure to subscribe. Most people watching right now aren't subscribed, and trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Now, let's begin. Jessica never imagined that an ordinary day could change her life forever. It started like any other, running errands, answering emails, lost in the routine of everyday life. But as she drove down the highway, a sudden sharp pain shot through her chest, stealing her breath. Her vision blurred, her hands trembled on the wheel, and within seconds, the world around her faded into darkness. The last thing she remembered was the distant sound of honking horns and the faint, distorted echo of someone screaming her name. Then, something impossible happened. Jessica found herself floating, light as air, free from the weight of her body. She could see the scene below with chilling clarity. Her own car, now stopped at an odd angle on the road, traffic piling up, and people rushing to help. Paramedics arrived, their voices urgent as they worked to revive her lifeless form. She should have been terrified. Instead, she felt an eerie calm, as if she was merely an observer in someone else's story. A brilliant light flickered at the edges of her vision, pulling her attention away from the chaos below. She turned, or at least she felt herself turn, towards something far beyond the physical world. A warmth surrounded her, unlike anything she had ever experienced. It wasn't just a sensation, it was a presence. She felt seen, known, and completely at peace. The fear, the confusion, the weight of her past, all of it melted away as she drifted closer to whatever was calling her. But just as she surrendered to this otherworldly embrace, a force gripped her. It wasn't violent, but it was firm, undeniable. A whisper echoed in her mind, though it wasn't spoken in words. Not yet. The light swelled, enveloping her completely. In that moment, Jessica realized she was no longer just hovering over her body. She was leaving the world she had always known, crossing a threshold into something beyond life itself. She had died, or at least that's what it felt like. And what awaited her on the other side would change everything she thought she knew about life, death, and the truth about black people's place in the divine order. Jessica felt herself being pulled forward, weightless, as if carried by an unseen force. The world she had known was gone. No more city noise, no flashing ambulance lights, just an overwhelming sense of motion. She wasn't walking, nor was she flying, but she was moving at an unimaginable speed, drawn towards something ahead. A tunnel of radiant light stretched before her, vast, yet somehow intimate, like it was alive and waiting for her. As she entered, warmth washed over her, not just physical warmth, but something deeper, a love that pulsed through every part of her being. It was unlike anything she had ever felt on Earth. The tunnel wasn't empty. Jessica could sense the presence of others. Shadows, figures, souls. They weren't threatening, they were welcoming. Whispers filled the space, voices speaking in a language she didn't know, yet somehow understood. Some called her by name, others sent emotions rather than words. Comfort, encouragement, recognition. It was as if they had been waiting for her. The farther she went, the more she became aware of something powerful beyond the tunnel. It wasn't just light, it was presence, an intelligence, a being, something or someone greater than anything she had ever known. The closer she got, the more a deep truth settled within her. She was about to see what lay beyond the veil of human existence, and strangely, she wasn't afraid. But just before she could reach the end of the tunnel, something unexpected happened. A vision flashed before her eyes, Earth, but not as she had left it. She saw places she had never been, people she had never met, events she had no way of knowing. A story was unfolding before her, something bigger than her, bigger than anything she had ever imagined. The tunnel grew wider, expanding into something vast and endless. And in the distance, waiting for her, was a figure. Not just any figure, a presence so powerful, so overwhelming that she instantly knew this was no ordinary being. Jessica was about to meet Jesus, and he had something to show her that would shake her soul to its core. Jessica's entire being trembled, not from fear, but from the sheer magnitude of the presence before her. The light shifted, taking form, and there he stood. Jesus, not the figure from paintings or Sunday school stories, but something far greater, far more real. His eyes, deep, knowing, filled with something beyond love, held hers, and in that instant she understood that he had always known her. Every thought, every struggle, every tear. She felt exposed, yet unashamed. It was as if her entire soul had been laid bare before him, and still he radiated nothing but warmth. His presence wasn't just light, it was truth, a truth that penetrated her very essence. And then he spoke, not with his mouth, but directly into her spirit. "Jessica, there is something you must see." With a simple gesture, the space around them shifted. The endless expanse of light transformed, and suddenly she was no longer standing before him, but moving through time itself. A vision unfolded, images so vivid, so alive that she could feel them. She saw lands she had never known, people with faces full of wisdom and strength. She saw kings, scholars, healers, black men and women, radiant in their divine purpose, carrying knowledge that seemed to hum with power. "This is your heritage," Jesus said, his voice echoing through the vision. Jessica's heart pounded as realization dawned upon her. She had never been taught this. No history book, no sermon, no classroom had ever spoken of what she was seeing. This was not just history. It was a truth long buried, hidden from the world. There is more. The vision shifted again, and now she saw suffering. Chains, whips, stolen names, stolen identities. She saw spirits dimmed, severed from the divine connection they once knew. The weight of it crushed her chest. Tears streamed down her face as she felt the agony of generations. Jesus turned to her, his expression solemn yet filled with love. This was not just physical bondage, it was spiritual. The truth was taken, hidden, rewritten. But it is time for it to be restored. Jessica gasped as understanding flooded her. This wasn't just about history. This was about something deeper, something the world had tried to erase. And now, standing before the Son of God himself, she knew one thing for certain. She had to bring this truth back. Jessica stood frozen, her soul absorbing the weight of what she had just seen. But Jesus wasn't done. With another shift in the air, the vision expanded, pulling her deeper into time, far beyond slavery, beyond colonization, beyond the rewritten narratives of history. She found herself standing in ancient Africa, but not the version she had been taught. This was a land untouched by distortion, pulsing with divine energy. Towering structures of unimaginable beauty rose before her, not just built from stone, but seemingly alive with spiritual resonance. People walked with a sense of purpose, clothed in garments that shimmered under the golden sun. Their eyes held wisdom, their movements carried an energy that Jessica could only describe as supernatural. They knew who they were, Jesus said, his voice firm yet gentle. They understood their divine connection. They did not look to the sky for God. They carried him within them. Jessica watched as elders gathered in sacred spaces, speaking in tongues that vibrated with unseen power. She saw healers who could mend wounds with only their touch, prophets who could see beyond time, warriors who fought not just with weapons, but with the force of their spirits. There was no doubt. These people were chosen, set apart, walking in a truth that the modern world had long forgotten. Tears welled in Jessica's eyes. Why had she never been told this? Why had their story been erased? She turned to Jesus, the question burning inside her. "Because power fears truth," he answered, reading her thoughts, "and those who wish to rule could not allow this knowledge to remain." The vision darkened, the air growing heavy. Jessica felt a shift, a deep sorrow approaching. Something was coming, something that would change everything. "Watch," Jesus said. And so she did. The air around Jessica thickened, pressing against her like an unseen weight. The golden cities, the wisdom, the divine connection, it all began to fade. In its place, darkness crept in. The vision shifted, and suddenly she was standing in a different time. The once proud people she had seen before were now shackled, their bodies bruised, their spirits dimmed. The vibrant lands were stripped bare, their temples and sacred spaces desecrated. She could hear the echoes of wailing, of prayers unanswered, of names being taken and identities erased. "This was no accident," Jesus said, his voice filled with sorrow. "This was calculated. It was not just about land or labor or wealth. It was about breaking something deeper, severing a people from their divine inheritance." Jessica watched as hands that once healed were bound in iron. Voices that once spoke prophecy were silenced with violence. The connection that once linked them to God so intimately was being buried under generations of suffering. She saw them cry out to the heavens, calling for salvation, for justice, for the restoration of what had been stolen. And then she saw something even more disturbing. She saw the oppressors, those who had orchestrated the suffering, gathering in secret places, studying the very knowledge they had stolen. She saw them twisting sacred truths, repackaging them, using them to build their own power, while keeping the true heirs in ignorance. Jessica gasped. "They knew. They always knew," Jesus confirmed, "and they feared what would happen if the truth was ever reclaimed." The weight of this revelation pressed into her chest. This wasn't just about slavery. It wasn't just about racism. This was about something much deeper, something spiritual. A war that had been waged not just on bodies, but on souls. And the chains weren't just physical, they were mental, emotional, generational. "But chains can be broken," Jesus said, his eyes blazing with undeniable truth, "and they will be." Jessica felt a shift, a stirring in the very core of her being. This wasn't the end of the vision. There was more to see, more to understand. The war wasn't over. It had only changed forms. And the next battle would not be fought with weapons, but with awakening. Jessica barely had time to process the weight of what she had seen before the vision shifted again. The chains, the suffering, the stolen truth, it all faded into darkness. Then, from the void, whispers emerged, faint at first, then growing louder. Not voices of hope, but of manipulation, of deception. She felt a chill run through her as shadowy figures came into view, rulers, scholars, religious leaders, and secret councils, all gathered in dimly lit rooms, conspiring. "They knew the truth," Jesus said, his voice steady, but heavy with sorrow. "And they feared it, so they hid it." Jessica watched in horror as sacred texts were rewritten, knowledge was distorted, and entire cultures were branded as primitive or cursed. She saw the rise of doctrines designed not to free, but to control. A system was put in place, one that would keep black people disconnected from their divine heritage, feeding them lies generation after generation. This is not just history, Jesus continued. It is a battle, and it has never stopped. Suddenly, Jessica saw the present day flash before her. She saw media pushing false narratives, schools teaching half-truths, entire communities held in invisible chains of self-doubt, division, and spiritual blindness. She saw how the very power that had once made black people a divine force was now used against them, turning them against each other, distracting them from their true calling. Her heart pounded. "But why?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Why go to such lengths?" Jesus turned to her, his gaze piercing through her very soul. "Because when they awaken, the world will change." A surge of energy coursed through Jessica's body. For the first time, she saw it clearly. This was not just oppression, it was a war over truth, over identity, over destiny, and the time was coming when the lost knowledge would be reclaimed. "But the enemy will not surrender easily," Jesus warned. "The deception runs deep. The battle ahead will not be of flesh and blood, but of spirit and mind." Jessica felt an urgency rise within her. She was beginning to understand. The chains weren't just physical, and neither was the key to breaking them. The real battle was about to begin. Jessica felt something shift within her, as if a veil had been torn from her eyes. The deception, the centuries of stolen knowledge, it was all designed to keep black people from realizing their divine power. But now, something was changing. The vision before her blurred, then sharpened again, revealing a new scene, one she had never expected. She saw people waking up, their eyes widening as the truth flooded into them. Across the world, black men and women were rediscovering their history, questioning what they had been taught, and breaking free from the lies that had bound them for so long. Some were turning back to ancient spiritual practices, reconnecting with traditions that carried real power. Others were finding deeper meaning in Scripture, realizing that much of what had been hidden from them was always there, if only they had known where to look. Jesus stood beside her, watching. "The awakening has begun," he said, "but with it comes a choice." Jessica turned back to the vision and saw two paths forming. On one side, there were those who embraced the truth with humility, using it to heal, to unite, to rise above the forces that once held them down. But on the other, there were those consumed by anger, by vengeance, by the temptation to use this newfound knowledge for power rather than purpose. She saw protests turning into riots, leaders becoming oppressors in their own right, and a darkness creeping in to twist what was meant to be a restoration. "Not all who awaken will choose the light," Jesus said solemnly. "That is the final test." Jessica's heart pounded. She had thought knowledge alone would be enough to free people, but now she understood. Freedom was not just about knowing the truth. It was about choosing what to do with it. "And what about me?" she asked, feeling the weight of it all pressing down on her. "What am I supposed to do?" Jesus turned to her, his eyes filled with something indescribable, love, urgency, expectation. "You must share what you have seen. The time is short, and the world is about to change." Jessica felt a deep, overwhelming sense of purpose settle into her soul. She wasn't just witnessing an awakening, she was being called to be a part of it. Jessica could feel it, the weight of destiny pressing into her spirit. This was bigger than her, bigger than anything she had ever imagined. The vision before her shifted once more, revealing something even more profound. She saw the future, not just her own, but the future of black people, the future of the world. And what she saw sent chills through her soul. She saw a great movement rising, like a tidal wave crashing against centuries of deception. Black men and women standing in their power, speaking truth, breaking generational curses, restoring their divine connection. She saw leaders emerging, not politicians or celebrities, but spiritual warriors, prophets, and visionaries, people who understood their purpose and refused to be silenced. "The world will not accept this easily," Jesus warned. "For too long, the systems of power have thrived on keeping this truth buried. When it rises, so will opposition." Jessica's vision darkened, and she saw the resistance forming. Governments branding this awakening as dangerous, religious institutions twisting the message, calling it heresy. Even members of her own community, though still trapped in the lies, fighting against it, unable to let go of the comfort of their chains. But then, through the chaos, she saw something else. A shift, a divine moment where the truth became undeniable. A day when the spiritual and the physical collided in a way no one could ignore. Some would embrace it, others would fear it, but no one would be able to stop it. Black people will play a crucial role in the awakening of the world, Jesus declared. For when they rise, they will bring light to all nations. Jessica's breath caught in her throat. This wasn't just about reclaiming a lost history. It was about restoring balance to the entire world. And time was running out. "Go back," Jesus told her. "Tell them what you have seen. Many will reject it. Many will call you a liar. But those with ears to hear will listen, and they will prepare." Jessica felt herself being pulled away, the vision fading, the warmth of the divine presence slipping from her grasp. But before it vanished completely, Jesus spoke one final time. What happens next depends on the choices they make. And with that, Jessica was gone. Jessica's eyes fluttered open, her chest rising sharply as she gasped for air. The sterile glow of hospital lights replaced the divine radiance she had just witnessed. Machines beeped around her, nurses murmured in the background, but none of it felt real. She had returned, but she was not the same. She had seen too much. She had been given a mission. At first, she hesitated. How could she even begin to explain what had happened? Who would believe her? But the urgency in Jesus' words echoed in her soul. "Tell them what you have seen." She had no choice. The truth had to be spoken. She began sharing her testimony, first with close friends, then at church, then online. And at first people listened. Some wept as they heard her words, feeling something awaken deep within them. Others reached out, saying they too had felt the stirrings of a greater truth, but had never been able to put it into words. Jessica felt hope. The awakening was beginning, but then came the resistance. Pastors rebuked her, calling her message dangerous, claiming it was not biblical, despite everything aligning with Scripture. Family members grew distant, afraid of what her revelations could mean. Online, she was met with a flood of accusations, people calling her a fraud, a heretic, even a tool of the enemy. And then the attacks became more than just words. Unexplainable things started happening. She would wake up in the middle of the night, paralyzed, feeling a suffocating presence in the room. Her electronics would glitch, shutting off whenever she tried to record her message. Strange figures lurked near her home, watching, waiting. Shadows moved where no shadows should be. She realized then this was not just a battle of knowledge. This was spiritual warfare. The same forces that had worked for centuries to bury the truth were now working to silence her. Jessica fell to her knees, trembling, crying out to God, "What do I do?" And then, just as clearly as before, she felt his presence. "Stand firm, speak, do not fear. The battle has already been won." Renewed strength filled her. She would not back down. No matter the cost, she would deliver the message she had been given, because this was bigger than her. This was about the future. Jessica knew there was no turning back. She had seen too much, felt too much. The truth wasn't just a revelation. It was a responsibility, and now it was time for others to awaken. She took a deep breath and spoke with conviction. "To my black brothers and sisters, You were never meant to be powerless. You were never meant to live in fear, in doubt, in confusion about who you are. The world has tried to erase your divine identity, to keep you chained, not just physically but spiritually. But the time of deception is ending. Her words spread like wildfire. Some listened, their souls stirring as if they had always known this truth but had been waiting for confirmation. Others rejected it, too conditioned by the lies to see beyond them. And some, the most dangerous ones, worked to suppress her message, mocking, censoring, trying to discredit her at every turn. But Jessica was no longer afraid. She had faced death. She had met the divine, and she knew that no earthly force could stop what had already begun. Wake up, she urged. Reclaim your heritage. Seek God, not through the lens of those who have twisted his truth, but with open eyes and an open heart. Your power is real. Your purpose is greater than you've been told. And soon the whole world will know it. She could feel it now. An unstoppable momentum, a shift in the very fabric of reality. The battle was far from over, but for the first time in centuries, the chains were breaking. As Jessica stood firm in her truth, she felt a strange sensation deep in her soul, a knowing. The world was on the brink of something massive, something irreversible, and she wasn't the only one who felt it. Across the globe, a stirring was taking place. People were questioning, seeking, rediscovering their spiritual roots. The deception that had ruled for centuries was beginning to crack. And then, the final vision came. She saw two futures. In one, people embraced the truth, broke free from their spiritual chains, and stepped into the divine power they had been denied for so long. A great awakening swept through nations, bringing unity, wisdom, and a restoration of what had been lost. A light so brilliant spread across the world that darkness had no place to hide. But in the other future, fear and division won. The truth was rejected. The deception tightened its grip. Those who tried to awaken were silenced, erased, made into villains. And the world, instead of rising, fell into chaos, controlled by the same hidden forces that had always worked against humanity. Jessica gasped. Which future will come to pass? She wondered. Jesus' voice echoed one last time. The choice is theirs, but the time is short. Jessica awoke from the vision with a pounding heart. The message was clear. This was not just about history, nor just about black people. This was about the fate of humanity. And now, the world had a decision to make. Would they awaken, or would they remain blind until it was too late? Jessica had done her part. Now, it was up to them. Which future do you see coming? Do you feel the shift happening in the world? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if this message resonated with you, make sure to subscribe, because what's coming next, you won't want to miss. Jessica's story is more than just a near-death experience. It's a wake-up call. The truth has been hidden for too long, and now the question remains, will you see it, or will you turn away? What if black people have a divine heritage that was stolen? What if the chains weren't just physical, but spiritual? And what if the time for awakening is now? The choice is yours. Will you step into the truth or stay in the deception? Let me know in the comments. Do you believe this revelation is real? Do you feel like something big is about to happen? Let's talk about it. And if this message spoke to you, subscribe now and turn on notifications, because what's coming next is even deeper than this. The truth is unfolding, and you don't want to miss it.